Live on connectonair.com and remoteradioweek.org.
Connect on Air.
Remote Radio Week proposes distinct programs in English, French, Spanish and Arabic, featuring experts, examples, debates and technical tips. UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely. Live on connectonair.com and remote-radio-week.org.
And what a week it's been. Thank you to all of you who participated as experts and delegates, offering your wisdom and experiences to help radio peers around the world build their capacity to face future crises with confidence through a tried and tested approach. Radio is clearly grateful to have the support of UNESCO and its mission to sustain local radio. And as we all know, local radio is a critical platform to ensure communities have access to the information they need when they need it most. To close this extraordinary week of panel discussions, masterclasses, expert testimony, and information exchange, I'm joined by Guilherme Canela, who is Chief of the Section for Freedom of Expression and Safety of Journalists at UNESCO. Guilherme, thank you so much. We learned this week about the valuable role that radio can play during a crisis, with panelists providing concrete examples of how the medium supported communities around the world. What is your sense of the future of this medium in doing more of this sort of thing? Clearly, UNESCO has a view that radio has sustainability when it comes to helping communities.
Definitely. First, thank you so much for the invitation to be here to close this important week. Although I was engaged in a discussion that is important for the radio workers as well, that is the safety of the media workers, including the radio workers. This week, we commemorated this week the International Day to End Impunity in Crimes Against Journalists. I heard from my other UNESCO colleagues that it was quite a successful week. And I think it's absolutely central to keep this medium that is actually on the heart of many people all over the world. So this is an important thing as well, because communication is also about emotions. And I must say that some of the problems we are facing with disinformation and misinformation is because some of these players are using emotions in a bad way. So I think radio is this medium that can do the contrary, can use emotions in a good way to make people engaged, to actually tackle some of the huge, enormous challenges that we are facing everywhere in the planet. Either it is climate change, or how we protect democracies, or how we deal with human rights violations, etc., so on and so forth. So I do think radio, and we do think here in UNESCO that radio has such an important role. A few years ago, during the Radio Day, the World Radio Day celebrated in February, the main topic was information saves lives, and we do think this is true, and radio has a enormous importance here. One of the key things is, as you mentioned, is radio is really this medium connecting with communities, either they are small or very big, connecting in their own language, including in indigenous languages. So those informations in times of crisis, they are absolutely fundamental. Either the crises are natural disaster, are sanitary situations as we are living now, or political situations. So for UNESCO, key that this week, there was also this idea on how we make this medium more sustainable. Is your question? It's not a question of an easy answer. Sustainability and viability of media is a huge question mark this very moment for all kinds of media, including for radio. But the only way of tackling this is to see how we can together cooperate to keep this medium that is absolutely essential for providing access to information to all.
Thank you for that, Guilherme. You're a champion, as we said earlier, of freedom of expression for the safety of journalists. One of the things we all know in our communities around the world is the proliferation of fake news. It's a considerable threat. Do you think enough is being done? We spoke about it this week during the Remote Radio Week. Is enough being done, and what more can be done to stop this scourge?
Oh, the obviously the so-called fake news, although UNESCO preferred the use the terms disinformation and misinformation, because the idea of fake news is has such a huge weight of idealization, the politicization, polarization. You have some political leaders saying, "You press, you are fake news, so this is not good." So we prefer to more and more use the technical term of disinformation and misinformation. So, but this is not a new phenomenon. As soon as information started to exist in humanity, lies also started to exist. What is really new here are what we call the three V's: velocity, virality, and volume. So what is really new here is that this is now such a massive phenomenon. And the way of countering it, and unfortunately not enough has been done yet. We need to do more. But one way of countering it is to recognize that this is a complex phenomenon, and therefore there is not easy solutions for that. We need complex solutions. And part of the complex solution story is that we acknowledge this is a big puzzle, and each piece of this puzzle counts. And therefore, radio has an important element here to stop this, to interact with the communities, so that the communities can understand that it's also part of our responsibility as average citizens, to stop the chain of disinformation and misinformation, to think before to click, to really engage with rational and scientific information in a proper way. So radio is fundamental here, but also to ask the other players to play their role here. And some of those players are, for instance, the social media platforms. UNESCO is underlining that one key way of countering this phenomena is that those companies needs to be more transparent. We don't know exactly what's going on because they don't share the data. So therefore, we do think that if radios all over the world can also put this message forward, we need those companies to be more transparent. This will help a lot. So in one way, what we need to do is to qualify the demand for information. So everyone, radio listeners all over the world, needs to say, we want more accurate and quality information. So this is one thing. The other thing, we need to qualify the supply. So what we are doing here with this Radio Week. So how radio communicators can be pieces in fact-checking, in providing accurate and reliable information. So it's the qualification of the supply of quality information. But only those two things are not enough. We need to discuss the transmission chain. And for that, we need more transparency, internet companies.
Glad you mentioned the internet companies. They often position themselves as technology and not media, and we know that those lines are blurring all the time. Let's focus in on technology specifically and its value and use to media around the world, but particularly radio in small communities, radio in rural areas. Technology plays more and more of an important role, and yet sometimes access is not possible because of cost, because of bandwidth issues. How is UNESCO making a difference in those areas, trying to create access to those smallest and the most impoverished broadcasters or radio stations in rural communities where resources are very scarce, particularly to technology?
Sure. I mean, I think this is a huge endeavor. It's obviously also under UNESCO mandate, but it's a broader mandate of the entire UN system. Our colleagues also from the International Telecommunications Union is very much involved. They are very much involved with them when we are talking about the specific subject areas like health. Our colleagues co-organizing this week of the World Health Organization are also involved. So it's a UN system-wide endeavor and quest to discuss this issue of accessibility in many different aspects and angles. That's why, for instance, we have this broadband commission under the UN system, where the idea is how we support in different ways governments, communities, etc. with that. Clearly, from the UNESCO point of view, our way of supporting member states, countries, etc., is with policy advice. So how we build better policies to achieve this target achieving what you just said. I mean, the last mile, that the accessibility really goes the last mile. We have advanced a lot in the last many years, but still there are lots to be done. Half of the population is not connected yet. And here we have this kind of cycle that might become a vicious cycle if we rely on the information, but then there is no technology, there is no connection. But the idea is how we transform this in a virtual cycle with more accessibility, with more connectivity, and then with more reliable information. So this is the task. Not easy to do, but we need to start with new policy frameworks where this particular element is in the very heart of the discussion. And if you allow me, just add one quick thing. We also need to have a broader view of accessibility. Obviously, connectivity and connection is important, is the first step, but we need to think accessibility on a broader way, considering multiple languages, considering the challenges for people with disabilities, etc. So this is the kind of policy advice that UNESCO is offering to the different stakeholders involved.
You're absolutely right, and which is one of the reasons why all of those themes, exactly like you've just mentioned, were covered in the Remote Radio Week. We talked about access for people with disabilities. We talked about access in a much broader way. Very important indeed. And I'm glad also that you mentioned the World Health Organization, because we're grateful UNESCO Remote Radio Week also had, World Health Organization contributing and supporting this endeavor of this week. So thank you for them. And we're grateful, as I said, for UNESCO's support and its mission to ensure that every community, regardless of economic status, degree of impoverishment, lack of resources, all has access to information and a platform to express their views. With a very successful Remote Radio Week over now, what's next on the UNESCO calendar in terms of your support for this medium and for the work that you're constantly and consistently doing to support small communities all over the world?
Well, I will briefly mention three things. It's coming now in the next week, the beginning of the UNESCO General Conference, and I'm sure radio will be on the agenda of our 193 member states, plus all the different stakeholders that are connected with this, let's say, the most important event for UNESCO, that is our governing bodies coming together and to decide what UNESCO is going to really keep doing in the next cycle of implementation of our activities. So please be tuned in, please follow the UNESCO General Conference. Then the other big thing is that actually for this community of radio, the World Radio Day, 13th February 2022. And I'm pleased to announce, maybe it was already discussed during this week, that the main topic of the day will be radio and trust. And this is absolutely connected with one of your questions. Part of the issue of the damages that this information is causing is a reducing trust in media. And luckily enough, radio is very well and high position in terms of trust. And therefore, we need to take advantage of this trust that radio has to keep saying that it's absolutely central to keep trusting in accurate, reliable medium as radio or other news media. And finally, I think what is next also for the radio community is to keep an eye on the different UNESCO initiatives and even funds like the International Program for the Development of Communications or the Global Media Defense Fund, or all those different areas that can also offer resources for different activities that the radio community is developing elsewhere.
Guilherme, thank you for that. Is there anything you want to say to the broader community of people that are watching, that have been with us for this entire week, before we say goodbye to you?
Look, I want to finish with an optimistic word. I think we are living very complex times. It's very easy to be frustrated, to be pessimistic, to be cynical either, regarding many of those issues. But I would say that this Nobel Prize, Peace Prize announcement on October the 8th for two journalists and for journalism and for quality information as central elements of peace, of democracy, of human rights, these every one of us connected here should be proud of. And should think of these announcements as a beacon of hope. Say, yes, we have many challenges, but there is an international recognition that the work you guys are doing is central for such important elements, such important issues as peace, as sustainable development, as human rights. So keep up with the good work. Keep doing it, because together we can face those challenges and we can make things move in the right direction.
Guilherme Canela de Souza, Chief of the Section for Freedom of Expression and Safety of Journalists at UNESCO. Thank you very much for that very powerful, very profound, very wise closing address. And thank you all for attending UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. If you missed any of the sessions, or if you'd like to watch them again, because they really were very compelling, you can replay any of the sessions or catch up on remoteradioweek.org. Remote Radio Week, all one word, .org. We're going to see you all at the next big UNESCO event that's coming up, but don't go away just yet. We have 4 fascinating videos for you to watch before you say goodbye to UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. That's coming up. Thank you very much.
UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely. Live on connectonair.com and remote-radio-week.org.
Connect on Air.
UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021.